Okay.
Good
Okay.
morning, everybody. It's Tammy, and I'm here with Tracy Caruso, and we are at our second to last book club of this season. And I'll talk later about what direction we're gonna do for the summertime. We might take a hiatus and then pop back up for the busy season. Today we'll
Her
let
face is
everybody
covered.
speak.
There's a
Pardon?
thing right in the middle. Tammy, there's.
Right, you have to say accept because we're recording it
Well, how do I do that?
with your mouse.
My man, where is
Click on
it?
it, says I accept.
It says got it, but
Got
Fred,
it.
here.
Yeah, click on got it.
Okay. Fred. He doesn't
Just
hear.
click on
Here.
got it with your mouse, Mrs. Spader.
I can't find the mouse.
You're on your
I'll get him. Go ahead.
All right, we'll meet Mrs. Fader. Well, anyway, so I can't, so this is recorded and now I'll just have to edit this off. So anyways, thank you guys, ladies, for joining us. And we're just gonna go ahead and welcome Tracy Caruso.
Hi, everyone. I know it's a smaller group today. I thank you guys for joining because I know that it's the beginning of Passover and Easter, and I'm just still glad that we're doing this. I know that today's book, The Other Black Girl, is a very, very different departure from certain things that we're doing, and I think that I've mentioned before that part of the whole book club experience to me is exposing everyone to things that they would never read before. That it's a whole different experience, and I'm kind of hoping that you guys got that. And I want to start out by saying that for our last one that we're going to be doing for this, it is a completely different type of book because it's about the Gilded Age. And I'm starting off this meeting by telling you something that I told you I might be able to pull off at one point. Well, we definitely can. The author of the next book is going to be the one who is on the meeting with us. So that is my big news to you. And I'll give Tammy all of that information so that we can, it's all set up. So that'll be a very different kind of meeting for us. Totally different than anything we've done. And I'm hoping that that's like a good way of ending our first season together. And I'm thinking that next session, when we do this again and we resume, if you guys want to continue to do this, that maybe we'll pick some things like a couple of maybe a Pulitzer Prize winner that was very popular, and and definitely a classic read. So we'll do something that's, very much a departure from what we've been doing, but maybe not quite as different as the kinds of things that we've been doing this session. So I've gotten more of a feel for you guys, and you'll let me know what you think. So that being said, we're going to be talking today about The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Zalila Harris. I'm trying my best here. I know my pronunciation is probably not the best, but there you go. So here's what I'm going to tell you about this. This book was published in 2021. It was very, very popular. It seems like 2021 was a very long time ago. It just kind of feels that way now because of COVID, but this was kind of the book of 2021. And that's the reason why I wanted to try it for you guys. It's a psychological thriller. It's set in Manhattan's competitive and predominantly white publishing scene. The author, Harris, who worked as an editorial assistant at Alfred A. Knopf Publishing House in Manhattan, draws together elements of literary realism and science fiction horror to deliver a novel in which office politics breeds paranoia and natural hair care products condition more than dreadlocks. Very unusual idea here. The Other Black Girl traces the experiences of 5 Black women at Wagner Books from 1983 to 2018 to address subjects including systemic and internalized racism, Black female experiences, workplace privilege, and the role of media in racial representations. This was a New York Times bestseller, and The Other Black Girl is being adapted into a limited series for Hulu, which I think is going to be very interesting. I think I'm going to really like this. I think that this is going to be one of the ones that and this doesn't happen a lot, but it happens sometimes, but I think I'm going to like it more as a series than as a book, although I did think the book was very interesting. So the book opens up in Manhattan in December 1983 as an unnamed narrator, later revealed to be Kendra Ray Phillips, flees New York City in terror. The only Black female editor at Wagner Books, Kendra Ray gave an interview in which she critiqued the racist structures within the publishing world. Although she faces massive media backlash, Kendra Ray is more concerned about the person or people pursuing her. As she anxiously waits for her train to leave the city, Kendra Ray scratches her burning scalp. So it's a prologue and a foreshadowing of events. Part 1 foreshadows a similar fate for our protagonist, Nella Rogers, who is an editorial assistant and the only Black woman who works at Wagner in 2018. Despite her attempts to start conversations about racial bias in diversity town halls, Nella doubts any meaningful change will occur. Wagner surprises Nella by hiring another Black woman named Hazel May McCall. The two women become friends, and Nella vents about a book she's editing called Pins and Needles, which features a racist caricature of a Black woman. Hazel recommends that Nella share her concerns with her boss and the author of the book. Nella takes Hazel's advice, which ends up backfiring spectacularly. And the first part of the book ends on a cliffhanger. Is Nella's career at Wagner, like Kendra Ray's, now over? Part 2 opens with a flashback to October 1983 with the release party for Diana Gordon's novel Burning Heart. Visibly fatigued by the racist microaggressions of her white colleagues, Kendra Ray rehearses comments she will voice in her infamous interview. 1 month later, Diana receives a frantic call from someone who wants to do something about Kendra Ray's bad press. In 2018, Nella's life begins to unravel. Her Black coworkers from other floors seem to favor Hazel, and Vera asks Hazel to assume Nella's usual task. Hazel also ruins Nella's credibility by defending the book Pins and Needles in a company-wide marketing meeting, completely sabotages her. And worst of all, Nella starts receiving threatening notes telling her to leave Wagner, which feeds her anxiety and paranoia. Punctuating these scenes are a couple of chapters from the perspective of Shani, a woman whose career Hazel sabotaged before coming to Wagner. Out for revenge, Shani joins the Resistance, an underground group tracking Hazel and OBGs, or other Black girls, hence the title of the book. OBGs are driven, competitive women who infiltrate corporate workplaces and convert normal Black women into compliant yet materially successful shades of themselves. Part 2 ends from Kendra Ray's perspective after she receives an anonymous call from a broken Nella and decides to come back to Manhattan and join the Resistance as well. So the next part reveals the ongoing struggle for power between OBGs and the Resistance, and Nella is now a part of their group. She attends an event Hazel organizes at Curl Central, a natural hair cafe, where Hazel announces a joint initiative with Wagner Books to create more equitable hiring practices in publishing. Stunned and jealous, Nella confronts Hazel. Hazel dismisses Nella's concerns, gives her a jar of smoothed out hair grease as a peace offering, and invites her to a natural hair party. Shani, who attended the event, reports her observations to the Resistance the following day. Kendra Ray, who is hiding at the Resistance headquarters, asks Shani to describe the contents of the jar and draws a connection between smoothed out, the substance that burned Kendra Ray's scalp in the prologue, and the method by which other Black girls are converting Black women, converting them. Unable to stand by and watch Nella's conversion, Shani defies the Resistance and contacts Nella directly. However, the Resistance intercepts Shani before they can meet. So then at the end of the next part of part 4, Diana recounts the chain of events leading from 1983 to 2018. Frustrated by the bad publicity from Kendra Ray's interview, Diana connects her lover, Richard Wagner, who's the owner of the publicity firm, the publishing firm rather, with her childhood friend Imani to develop a chemical formula that can numb the prefrontal cortex, thus making Black women more compliant. They try and fail to use the formula on Kendra Ray. However, decades later, the trio successfully employs a network of lead conditioners like Hazel to convert young Black women all over the country. Unaware of this scheme, Nella attends Hazel's natural hair party with the intention of learning more about Hazel's shady behavior. Nella finds a folder with files on a handful of Black women, herself included, with detailed notes about conversion. Nella escapes, but the following day at an important meeting, Nella realizes that Hazel has converted their guest of honor, a famous Black activist. Defeated, but somewhat relieved, Nella finally consents to conversion. And in the epilogue, Nella becomes a lead conditioner who arrives in Portland, Oregon to fix Shawnee. So in this debut novel, Harris examines racism, microaggressionism, and tokenism through the lens and optics of the obsessed publishing industry. And we remember that Harris, the author, worked in the publishing industry herself. So that, that leads a little bit of a compelling aspect to this. She's doing it from her perspective of what the publishing industry is like for a Black woman. And it's a contemporary psychological horror novel about an industry that she actually personally knows inside and out. So my first question for all of you is, what did you think of the book? Okay, I can tell that someone is trying to talk. I think that's Miss Zoto. Were you trying to speak? They're all on mute, Tammy, so I have no idea. Okay.
I only went to 163 pages.
Yeah.
And actually, I didn't like it at all.
Okay.
I mean, I thought the publishing part of it was going to be really good. I'm too old. I didn't know what all the acronyms meant. I'm other Black, OBC. Okay. It just didn't hit me at all. I thought it was absurd, this hair thing. Who puts things on scalp to change people's thinking? I mean, and then Tammy had a little run. I mean, evidently this whole hair issue, which was obvious in the book, right, was a big thing with the author. And then Tammy had a little film on ahead of time with the author speaking, and she certainly didn't take care of her hair because it was woofed all over the place. I mean, so, I never worked in corporate. So I didn't understand that. I did in our business, worked with many Black people, but it was my husband and I that were running it. So there were no political games that were played in it. I didn't go along with the Black woman speak. Okay. And the one thing, okay, it was all the hair stuff, but then it was all the scents. Okay, she was always throwing food in, starting with the cocoa butter of Hazel and the pretzels in the drawer and the leftover fruit in the lunchroom. And that was only to page 163. So personally, I wouldn't recommend the book to anyone. And I would love to see the New York, whoever said it was a bestseller, I would love to see who the audience was. I don't think it was old age women, white women.
Just a minute.
Well, wait, before we go on with that though, you guys all did read The Girl with the Louding Voice, and this whole group loved it, right?
Right.
Okay, but that was about a culture, okay?
This.
Yes, okay, but I don't think she explained it. I don't think she.
That's in the writing. Yeah.
No.
But you did. So you actually do think, okay, so this particular book didn't hit you in the same way, but you have read things that are totally outside of your experience that you
Oh,
can't.
absolutely. That's
It was,
why I
you
love
know,
book club.
you know what I mean? It was exactly. So when you read The Girl with the Louding Voice, that's why this is actually a good comparison to that. It's, you know, it was about a totally foreign culture, about a very, very young girl. And just, you know, for the record, I liked, I loved that book. And I thought this one was okay. This
Right.
one had a lot of hype, but this one was okay. So, you know, just so you know, I mean, I really did love the other book and I thought this one was, but it still was a very different thing than you probably would have read. You know, outside of, and it was totally outside of your experience too. That one just hit you differently. I mean, it was a better book. It just was.
Yeah.
But it was outside of your experience too. This
Right.
one just didn't resonate with you in the same way. Do you know what I mean?
No way.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts about it? Mrs. Birnbaum,
Uh-oh.
if which your wait, your volume is off. So I think Tammy's got it. There we go.
Well, when I first heard about this book, I was very excited to read it. Thought this is going to be really, really interesting.
Mhm.
And when I started it, I stopped it, and I started it, and I stopped it, and I said, "This is moving so slowly that it's really interesting." And when I kept looking, where is the thriller? There's a thriller. It's supposed to be a thriller, and it just moved so slowly, and then each chapter had a date in front of it. So I kept going back to see what the chapter before was. There's a different year or what? It just didn't really hit the spot with me. And I was
Sure.
very disappointed because I thought it was going to be something that I was really going to be very interested in and
Mhm.
enjoy. So I don't know.
Would you see if the when the limited series comes out, would you try it? Would you see it?
Sure. Me?
Yeah.
I would try anything to.
Yeah.
to-
To see what it is.
anything-
I just have a feeling that it's gonna resonate better in a limited series. I mean, I can see it. I think they're gonna put it together a little bit differently. And like some of those, you know, see, some people either like that mechanism of the flashback and flash forward. Some people really hate it and they think it's a confusing. It was a little confusing in this book,
Mhm.
the way they did it, where you're like, okay, wait, they went back. What year is this one? It was a little confusing. So
Mhm.
sometimes it can work better than others. I actually think in the case of this book, they probably would have been better off telling the whole story about the 1983 one, that they probably would have been better off doing it that way in the case of this particular book, and then going on and actually keeping it chronological, because it was a little confusing
Mhm.
of the way.
First,
Yeah.
can you hear me? First of all, this
Yeah.
is a book about editing, and I thought it was badly edited. That's
Mhm.
why it was confusing. You were jumping
Mhm.
around, you were having difficulty, names, dates.
Mhm.
It did not help.
Mhm.
I was determined, so I knew I was going to finish it.
Was
One of the
determined.
One of the things
Go
about
on.
this book, though, is
Mhm.
I had read a book, Americana, if you know that book.
I
right?
do. I do.
It's all about hair. And I realized at that time that people of color spend a lot of time and money on doing their hair.
Mhm.
Hours, days. I mean, you can't believe that how complicated it is. And we never realized that. I remember Oprah saying one thing she learned about white women is that it's not always their color hair. They have different color hair, and that's not how they started out. I'm railing about this because
And once again, push her way behind the baseline.
hello.
Yeah.
Oh, this is, I could understand that as being part of it. That was okay with me. But
Mhm.
I was waiting, Black Lives Matter, I was waiting for people to be supportive of each other. And I didn't get any of that feeling of support
From the women, you mean, in the book?
from the women at
Other?
all. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And undermining, attacking, all those little things that were going on constantly. And that's irritating as a woman today. I
Mhm.
would want women to support each other. We know that young girls are probably the worst in this world because I've had daughters and I've watched some of the activities. And, but at this point, as women and as certainly as seniors, I have a different feeling about that. And my expectation is that, first of all, avoid negativity and you want positive people. And I find most people are more positive. Of course, I'm in Glen Eagles, so I can say I'm in a bubble.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's good. It means that you're in a good supportive community.
Yes, it
But
is.
you know something? That brings, I'm going to ask some questions a little out of order than I was going to do it based on what you said, because it actually lends into some of the discussion here. You know,
Tracy,
Yes,
can I make
yes.
a quick comment just responding to
Sure.
Buzzy?
sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Buzzy, I agreed with everything you said and I couldn't get through the book. I couldn't finish it. And I can count the number of books that I can say that about on one hand. I always finish a book and I couldn't get through it. And your explanation about it and Buzzy's comment explains it.
Mm.
I wasn't expecting a psychological thriller. And that was the point. The point was the digs that made Buzzy uncomfortable. The tension I felt in the first, 150, 200 pages made me so uncomfortable that I couldn't finish the book. But I didn't realize it was a psychological thriller with a little bit of sci-fi in it. If I had known that in advance, I might have been reading it from a different angle.
Sure.
I knew from the very beginning that it was Hazel. I knew that Hazel was not as good as she appeared, but I couldn't get through it. And I think that it was the genre that I wasn't prepared for that genre. I was looking for
Sure.
something that was racially loaded, but not both sci-fi and a psychological thriller. That's my
This
two cents.
genre is very specific. It's actually one of the reasons I wanted to do it, because it's become hugely popular and it's very different. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie. It's called Get Out. Has anyone
Yes.
seen this?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the same
That's
genre.
disturbing too.
Yeah, that's
Um,
the same genre, and it's become very popular amongst all people. And but it's incredibly different. Until a few years ago, I'd never really seen anything like this. This actually might come as a surprise to you guys, but this book was a Good Morning America book club pick.
Really?
Does that surprise any of you? Yeah,
Very,
because you think
very.
of it as very white. The Good Morning America.
Right. But I didn't think it was that well written. That was
Yeah,
my
it was.
time.
It's got all. I'm telling you, it got all the hype in the world. I didn't get this from my head. I promise you, it was like a very. And that's why it's going to be on Hulu as a series. But that's what makes it interesting. Maybe we know that it's too different a thing for us. Maybe we know we don't like this genre at all. Maybe you'll see some movies in this thing, some things that are Jordan Peele, different kinds of things, and say, you know what, I don't like it in book form, but I really like it in a series. It can open you up to different things. Or maybe you'll read another book that's like this kind of thing, and now that you've been exposed to something like this, it won't be as alien, and you might say, wow, I really like this book. Or you might read another something like this and say, you know what, I just hate this genre, I'd never read this again. You know what I mean? You never know. It's very different, there's no doubt about it. But what I wanted to ask you guys was, in this book, the company hires, because it goes to the discussion that you guys were just having, they hire another Black girl. And Nella hopes that they're going to be allies. She's actually very excited at first. Remember, she's the only one there, the publishing firm. And now they hire another one. And she kind of assumes that they're going to be friends. She wants to be. She thinks Hazel seems really cool and interesting. But she starts to suspect that Hazel is competitive with her, that it's not a friendly ally. So I know that a couple of you answered this, but did you all know that something was off with Hazel right from the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah, they knew something was not right with Hazel, that Hazel was kind of the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
She wasn't dependable. If she's your friend, you can depend on a friend. But
Mhm.
she never knew what was coming. But she divided the world, color and no color.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping that people see each other differently as people. And there was a big emphasis on that one. Her descriptions of how they smelled and what they looked like was constant in order to pass her test.
Mhm.
If you did that, then you never get along in this world because you're dividing yourself instantly. And when she meets somebody, she starts off with how they dress, what they look like, what they smell like, and so forth. And of course, I wonder what that cream is that they put on somebody's head that changed them completely.
That's a big mystery, right?
Right.
Well,
Fred.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go on.
That these people in this world, hopefully, we're trying to progress. We've got enough 4 years of discord. I want to see people getting together.
Mhm.
Again, I'm in Glen Eagles. I see the world, but I'm lucky. That's all.
And I hear you.
What I
but
mean,
you ever notice that people that, okay, so when you meet a group of people, you usually start talking to people that you find somebody that you connect with them on some level. And then that's the person that you end up talking with. At least this is my experience, right? So you say, oh, you're from New York. I'm from New York. Where did you grow up? And you start bonding on that level and starting to get to know each other, right? That's pretty common when you
That is.
say,
Yeah.
or, for me, I'll meet some people, something will come up and I'll say, oh, you're Jewish. I'm Jewish. Oh my, wow, really? And then we start talking about that, right?
Mhm.
And let's say I do that with somebody, and this has happened, and it turns out that I'm the Jewish person there, and this other person's Jewish, and nobody else is Jewish. We might have something based on the fact that we are the only two Jewish people that are there, and that it's an assumed you may actually end up not having anything in common at all, or not having a common value system or anything else. But your assumption, your gut reflex is that you do,
Yeah,
and that
I
you
will-
would get along with them, right?
I also read this from a different perspective. I was in a book group and I was the only Jewish person. And
Okay.
we read a book and there was an anti-Semitic part in the book. Nobody picked it up. And
Yep.
I brought it up at the meeting. And their answer to me was, you should have a sense of humor about that.
Interesting.
From very sensitive people. Those two girls were gay. Everything in the world was, they didn't say hello because I'm gay. They didn't know. I mean, I'm just saying that's our response. And yet said to me, sense of humor. And I said, I promise you, under no circumstances in this earth do I have a sense of humor about anti-Semitism as well
Sure.
as anti-other people,
Sure.
that kind of
Sure.
thing. I mean, really, I grew up that way. And of course, my kids now and my grandchildren for sure, they don't see color. It's a whole different world. And I think that's wonderful, but I don't think this book helps that to see
Well,
that.
no, but what it shows, okay, first of all, without getting into a whole thing about this, I think that we can all agree that that racism still exists in
Yes.
the world, that things are getting better, but it still exists in the world. But the reason why I brought up the whole, let's say for me, being Jewish, and then, meeting somebody else that's Jewish, I think it's an instant reflex that we do this, whether it's, okay, I'm Black and now there's one other Black person here. So I think we're going to get along and we're going to whatever, or you do it simply based on, let's say you go somewhere to some event and you meet somebody else from Glen Eagles.
Mhm.
Do you live in Glen Eagles? Oh my God, so do I. And then you're going to probably bond with them and you have a certain commonality. I think it's a normal reflex that we all have. You may end up, as you get to know them, not liking them, or they may not like you, but you are going to you probably assume that you have some kind of common bonds. And it's, oh, you grew up on, the Lower East Side of, so did I, oh my God, all right. And then you start to have that kind of thing. And so I think that this reaction that she has in the beginning, I think it makes
Oh,
total
yes.
sense, right?
Absolutely.
That this is the person she's going to bond with. And, I'm sure everybody wants to get along in the world and who they are, but they're going to have certain struggles, and everyone isn't going to be sensitive to every kind of thing. It's no different than the experience that you had where they said to have a sense of humor about the anti-Semitic thing and whatever. It's very easy if you're not that person and it's not you, it's hard to understand, it's hard to relate, it's hard to see it in the same way. And I think that's part of the reason why if you have a commonality with somebody, you tend to bond with them on that level. Because as much as you try to understand other people's experiences, it's not exactly the same as being the person within that experience, if that makes sense. I think that's how identity politics comes about. I think it's very common to assume that somebody who is more like you in whatever way, you're the same race, the same religion, or you're from the same place, or you live in the same community, any one of those things are things that at least upon first meeting, you're going to assume that you have something
That's very,
together.
that's valid. And the
Right?
difference is that it's more obvious when it's color. You
Sure.
know immediately. That I
Sure.
understood. But I
Yeah.
really expected to see more support among the groups when they went to the lecture, everything that was going on was, nobody was supportive. Nobody was really a good friend. And young people, they're all young.
Sure.
I would want them to be better friends and help each other. That part bothered me. I think you're right. The movie should be clearer because
I think it'll be, I think
Yes.
I think it really will be. But my question is, have any of you ever been in a similar situation where you were the only one or whatever, and then you met somebody else who was the next person of whatever? And my question beyond that, my first question about that is, did you react this way where you thought, okay, this person is more like me in certain ways and bond with them? And then did you have the experience of ending up not liking them or being disappointed by them when you got to know them? Has anyone had either of those experiences?
The last 4 years gave you that. There was difference. You were for Trump or against Trump. That divided families. That divided so many things. And when you met people, you don't know. You could say you're from New York and you're from Texas, whatever is going on there, but it comes out pretty quick. And then that's that. There's a point now where people can't be together for dinners. I had friends whose kids told them, don't come for Thanksgiving because he was Trump and he never stopped needling. And the kids didn't.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay.
Well, let's say the one Trump person was in the room with another Trump person and nobody else was a Trump person. Chances are those two people would have like this immediate, it's actually exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Chances are they have this immediate commonality, but you know what? They might get to know each other and then be like, oh, wow, we have that thing in common, but I don't like this about this person, or I can't get along with them on that. So that's what I'm really asking. Have any one of you ever had that experience where you met somebody and off the bat, you thought that because whatever, you were from the same place or you're the same religion or whatever, you thought you were going to like them, because you surface had a lot in common, and then you found out you didn't like them.
Yep. I think everybody. Yes.
Yeah. I think Mrs. Birnbaum is trying to talk. I see a lot of movement, but she's muted.
Okay.
No, I think everybody has experienced that. That you think, and as it was said with politics, you're just afraid to open your mouth and say anything, because that can start a whole big a rumpus and spoil the whole everything. So yeah, I find that these last few years you have to be very, very careful of what you say and how you become friends with people, and it's a different world, different world. But with all the Black people that are getting into politics and into positions of importance, it's going to be even a more interesting world, which is better, which is better.
I like that. It's true, and I like that.
Yeah, and that's the way the world is headed. And it's
Except you have,
very interesting.
you have people that are dedicated to not allowing that. You understand?
Oh, yes.
We're saying that's a positive. And then there are people, their only thing is to limit people's access and anything else. That's it. There's no other policy but that.
It's just going to be a normal way of living, hopefully. That I mean, that's the thing that everybody's always wanted, to be friends with and to be in good terms and not have enemies and have everybody on the same page. And I think in some ways we're getting that way, and in other ways we're far from it.
Getting far from it.
Far from it. But hopefully things will get better.
Yeah.
I always try to look at the brighter side, but it doesn't always work.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know, with that being said, you know, there's a passage towards the beginning of the book that says diversity becomes an item people start checking off of a list and nothing more. Do you agree with that statement at this stage of our time? Miss Zotto? I was going to say Mrs. Zotto, and then I got thrown off by the Missy.
We can just say Missy. Okay. Very interesting. My son-in-law was just here and he was talking about it. He works in a financial in the financial field, and his company was bought out by a much larger company, which is something that has really been happening a lot. And he was told that he had to hire, he needed in this merger, he needed to hire 18 people, but 4 of them had to be diverse candidates. Okay. So he hired 14, and it's like 9 months later, and HR came to him and said, "You haven't got your quota. Why haven't you?" And he said, "Because you told me they had to be diverse candidates." Okay. And there is not one qualified person that has come in that I can hire. Now, I don't think that that's being a woman that was the only female accountant when I was in college. I always thought it should be the best candidate should be the one that's hired. But to now that we're so into this diversity that, you know, okay, right away. So anyhow, HR told him it's better to get the best candidates, and you've done your best to try. If anybody comes against us, we can show how you tried to hire for diversity. But just to have that as the criteria doesn't seem to me to be the most beneficial thing to everyone.
It actually sounds like your son's company is doing it the right way. They wanted to do it and they still want to do it, but they're still hiring based on who the best person is. So I think that they actually did it the right way. I mean, if you're trying to do it, and he didn't just,
Okay,
look,
he
if
was
he had
strong
just
enough
hired somebody and the person wasn't really good and he just hired them because they were a diverse, hire, that's not exactly really beneficial for the company. Ultimately, they're not getting the best people.
Well, that's what we discussed. And he said, there are people out there that would hire any candidate just to please the organization.
Wow. Well, I hope that, I hope for him and for everyone. And I think we'll see more of that. Maybe he'll get more candidates in.
Yeah, but there's
Keep looking,
there's a problem with that. If you
Yeah.
hire them and they're incompetent, and then you have to
can't
let them
fire
go.
them.
You can't
Yeah.
fire them, exactly. And therefore, Now, and would you want that person to be your brain surgeon? I mean, you really want
Okay.
competence when you go to places. And there are people who can be qualified, but unfortunately, it's not coming together in many areas. So, but it gets tricky. And I can understand that.
Absolutely.
And that was one of the things, this girl, again, whatever they said was because of her color, not because she didn't know it or she was incompetent or she was whatever. She just took it completely by color. Anybody's response was that. And her choices were color.
Mm.
That got to bother me. I really felt that she should look at people more than their color.
You know, I think it's like anything else. I mean, you know, your identity is your identity. And if that's what you're experiencing, you know, I think it also has to do with if you experience something that's negative, like, you know, from the area of the publishing industry, it's actually been widely known as a not great area for people that aren't white. I mean, it's known that they have information out about Black authors not getting paid advances that are equal to their white counterparts. They've had a lot of issues there.
Well,
So part
women
of
say
it might have seemed like a little hostile in a way, but part of that hostility, that's what made this interesting, is that the author did work in this industry.
yeah.
So she's telling you this. She's writing a book that's completely fictional with, you know, elements of sci-fi and some, you know, weird things in it. But she's giving you a pretty good idea of how she felt about that industry when she worked in it. Yeah, I have a feeling we'd see a very different kind of book if she felt that she was treated in a very equal way. It seems to me that she felt that she wasn't.
I wanted somebody of color to read it and tell me what they thought. I even brought it to my Tai Chi class, but she didn't come that day, and give it to her because I wanted to know how valid was some of that sensitivity, or and that would be interesting.
Yeah. And you know what, I wanted to, well, that's kind of like a way of doing a lot of it, right? You want to know what somebody's opinion, you know, is of something. Like you go and you find out from, you know, anyone who is part of whatever group or community or anything else. Like, is this accurate? You know, is this accurate? Because you're never going to know.
More how do you feel about that? I wanted to know the feelings.
Is it true? Do you feel this way? Have you experienced it?
Yeah.
It is an interesting thing. And that brings me to another question, which is Nella's boss asked for her opinion. Do you guys remember this on the latest best-selling author, Colin Franklin? That was that Pins and Needles books. And she shares her concerns about how the only Black character was written. So it brings up exactly what you just said you wanted to do with this book. They asked in that company, in this book, they asked their Black employee what they think of the Black character in a book. How do you feel about it? She tells them, and the boss gets offended and the author gets offended by what she has to say. They get offended and they get defensive. Why do you think they wouldn't listen to her when they had asked her opinion?
I wanted you, I went back to find that description because when I read it, I didn't think it was that bad. What they said that she took to be racist. I don't know if anybody I couldn't find it, but if you could, I'd love to know that little part. I was going back through the book. I wasn't going to reread it, but it didn't seem to me that was a very racist remark about that person in the book that she took really out of.
You know what though? But that goes to show you, maybe if you were Black, maybe you would look at it and say, oh my God, I can't believe that they wrote it. You know what I mean? It's actually no different than, think about when you read the thing in the book and you saw the thing as anti-Semitic and everybody else was like, what are you talking about? I don't really see it. Or you're making a big deal out of nothing. It's very hard to know you can't know exactly.
Right. I read it with that in mind because I understand that. But that's why I wanted another. And if you could find that, I'd love to know later on where it was.
So Missy, I want to know what Missy Missy
Oh,
has. to say.
okay, but and see, when I said I enjoy other cultures, if she had in this, that was early in the book, relatively early in the
Right.
book. And if she had explained a little bit more about how how white the publishing industry was, and that she felt that she should, well, I guess maybe I just didn't pick it up. They did talk about how that she wanted diversity, and she would have meetings and try and get other Black girls or Black people into the office there. But I somehow it didn't come. I wish she had. That was one thing I was hoping that she would explain more about the publishing industry,
Mhm.
because I'm not associated with it, and I would have liked that. You just said now it's common knowledge that the
Yeah.
publishing industry is white. In
Yeah.
your world it is, but not in my world. And then she
Yeah.
went into all these different hair products.
Yeah.
A
Yeah,
lot.
the hair product. The
You know
hair product.
I didn't know what the
You know
hell
what?
they were talking about.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. And
Tracy.
someone brought that up in the, yes, I'm sorry.
As you're reading it, the first Black Supreme Court justice was going in. I'm reading that at that time. And
Mhm.
they had an interview with her friends, all went to Harvard Law, but they were adorable and supportive and wow. And I didn't see one cutie in this book as sweet as those. Nobody was sweet. They were all digging. And
This wasn't a
fascinating.
happy book. I mean, there's no
No.
doubt about it. This was not a happy book. I
And
mean,
you're
as
saying
we saw, there was no happy ending in this thing. You know,
Yeah.
why do you think towards the end of the book, they show that she ends up kind of like giving in. They describe her as being somewhat relieved. And then she becomes one of their people to try to convert other Black women and make them more compliant. What do you think was the point of that? Did anyone have an idea?
Mm. I
No,
don't
no
know.
thoughts on
What do
that.
you think? What do you
It's- Yeah, I think that sometimes it's hard. I think that I personally would have liked a more upbeat, angle where, you want to think that that people are always going to fight back and that, good prevails and all of this stuff. And I think that what they were trying to say is that this is just my personal interpretation, is that it became too much for her. It does sometimes. And sometimes people give into the system of what's going on to try to get along in the world around them, even though they feel like they're sinking into a hole and it's not the best thing. But it was, I thought it was actually very interesting that they used the hair grease as a social lubricant, that was the reason why. Does anyone have any idea why the author chose that? Mrs. Birnbaum, I know you're dying to say it. Say something.
I don't know why the author did that, but I thought that was such a weird thing.
Yeah.
It
Where is
just
that?
didn't fit. It didn't fit. And I said, what's the connection? I mean, who would
Yeah.
ever think of something so simple to convert somebody to somebody different? I mean, that didn't make sense to me.
I think that the reason
Just
why
a-
she chose it, I mean, obviously that's the science fiction part because we know that this could never really happen. But I think that the reason she specifically chose that was because of something that one of you said in the beginning. Hair is an extremely
true.
important part of Black culture. It just is, and they all use, a lot of the women particularly use product like that in their hair. So it would be a common thing, I mean, if somebody gave me a hair product that had cocoa butter in it, and some other things, that would never be going in my hair. Be like, thank you for the gift. I don't know what I would do with it. But,
Right.
but in other cultures, that's what they use, in their hair. It's very common. And I think that that's why she chose it, and the sense of cocoa butter and those kinds of things, also very common. So I think that I think that that's the reason why the author chose that mechanism, because it's something that a lot. I mean, I remember even seeing a documentary a number of years ago called Hair, and it was all about Black people and their connection to hair and the importance of it, how they feel about it, how women feel about it. It was very interesting. It was very interesting. I think Chris Rock hosted it. It's years old. But it's something that some of you might be interested in seeing. It might give you more of a background as to why, something like that for this book. For sure. Now, what did you guys think about this idea of other Black girls? Did this, this group that was like the resistance and working that the ones who had found out about this group and were working against it. What did you guys think of that whole thing? Nothing, you're like, oh, we just hated that part of it. All right, what did you think of the reveal when you found out? Or for those of you finding out now that was what was going on, that they were making people compliant by giving them this hair grease. It's very bizarre, but they were giving people hair grease to make them compliant.
Very, very, very bizarre.
Very bizarre. Very bizarre. So that was a strange reveal. Was anyone reading this and going, where are they going with this? Was it a complete surprise?
I kept thinking, is that the thriller part? Where is the thriller in this book? Very, very strange.
Yeah, there are certain things here. I'm gonna read you this. This is where this genre. This is what this is like. The other Black girl is arriving during a Black horror renaissance. That's what this is part of. Something that they're calling Black horror renaissance. Movies such as Antebellum in 2020, Bad Hair, which was also 2020, and TV shows like Amazon Prime Video's Them, which I saw and is deeply disturbing, but very interesting, but disturbing. And HBO's Lovecraft Country, which I've never heard about. They've been criticized for a series of glaring missteps. The movie Get Out, which we discussed with Jordan Peele, and Us from 2019, avoids some of those blunders. So they have found certain things about this genre to be problematic. So think of it as a genre in progress, but an interesting one that many people are really getting involved with now. There are classic ones that are part of this genre. There's one called Ganja and Hess from 1973, Candyman from 1992, and Tales from the Hood, which is a really great movie. I loved it, 1995. And that paved the way for Jordan Peele, speaking directly to Black audiences and positioning whiteness as an allegory about destruction. That's kind of what this genre is. And it's, getting a voice out, whether it seems like it's, ew, I don't want to see it. This is bad. I don't like it. I feel uncomfortable. It's not bad to see others' perspectives. There's a movie from Wes Craven, also called The People Under the Stairs. Peele plans to remake it and produce it. It's cited by critics as a socio-political horror film. It successfully deconstructs gentrification and white supremacy. So you're going to see more of these. Rather than employing clumsy storytelling and fixating on educating the audience, these acclaimed social horror films don't define Blackness solely in the context of victimhood. The genre's best offerings push beyond the shock value of on-screen brutality and confront the existential terrors that arise in a white supremacist society. So according to this article, the other Black girl doesn't exploit trauma or include gratuitous violence. The narrative's Hitchcockian level of suspense heightens the horror of Nella's experience. I kind of didn't feel that way about it. I kind of felt like it was a buildup with not enough bang in it, but that's me. About the show Them that I was discussing, it matters how creators deploy violence, not just whether it exists at all. And they feel that the other Black girl masters this. At first, the story villains appear clearly defined, but Hazel is revealed to be an infiltrator who's specifically conspiring against Nella. She's able to get into Nella's head and the minds of other Black women through a unique mind control tactic that dissolves their morals and personal conviction. Using Black women's hair care as a brainwashing tool isn't an outlandish or unthinkable narrative device, especially when said hair care is a $2 billion industry. In real life, some Black hair products are harmful and even fatal. A 2018 study conducted by researchers at the Silent Springs Institute and Battelle Memorial Institute discovered a link between toxic ingredients in popular hair care products and hormone and asthma-related illnesses. So that's an interesting thing that I actually didn't know. In this way, the other Black girl, much like other Black horror, turns racism into a living entity. Much like the scene in the movie Get Out, which if you haven't seen it, I recommend that you see this one. It's only a few years old. There's a character, Chris, who's shown sitting silently in a chair, tears rolling down his cheeks, and he is pulled into the conscious imprisonment known as the sunken place. Jordan Peele tweeted, "The sunken place means we're marginalized. No matter how hard we scream, the system silences us." Peele's use for the collective us delineates the film's hero, Chris, from the monsters and other characters within the film. So, the other Black girl depicts a type of sunken place too, as a state of consciousness induced by indoctrination. Hazel, in the final act, Hazel confesses that she isn't part of a national organization dedicated to targeting successful, smart Black creatives and brainwashing into being more palatable and less threatening to their white coworkers. She breaks Nella down by promising her, "It'll wash over you so quickly you won't even feel it. You won't feel the pain. You won't feel the white supremacy. You'll swim to the top and be free." Yet this freedom isn't a gift, it's a form of captivity. So the book does not end on a happy note, but this isn't the last of this kind of thing you're going to see. We've had a lot of things out there, and we're going to see more books like this, and more movies and more television series that delve into the same area. Very interesting times, right?
Don't recommend.
You don't recommend? Well, I hope that you guys at least found this to be very interesting. And I have a feeling you're going to love our next book because it is about the Gilded Age. And it's completely different than what we've been reading. And we're going to have the author. So I hope that you guys have more fun with that one. And I think you'll feel a little more uplifted. It's historical fiction. So, you're reading about things that have actually happened. And I think you're going to end up loving it. Does anyone, Nancy, you're trying to say something, or is it just a hand? Miss Friedman? Maybe
I
not.
enjoyed it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was fun.
Thank
It's very Fiora Davis.
Yeah.
Very fun. It was fun.
Good. I love that.
I didn't read this one.
Okay.
I'm
Anyone?
glad.
Yeah, and you're glad. Anyone else have anything to say before we sign off for our next meeting?
What is the name of the next book?
It is called The Social Graces by Renee Rosen. And Renee Rosen is going to be on our meeting with us, and she's going to be doing her whole discussion and presentation, and you will. So I say, definitely read this, tell your friends to read this, and come with questions, because she's going to be able to be there. I mean, nothing better than being able to hear from the author, and it is historical fiction. So the amount of research she's done is unbelievable. So you'll be able to find out anything you want about the Gilded Age, which is really popular right now, right? With the Downton Abbey next one that we have out now, the Gilded Age, it's become really, really popular. So I think you guys are going to love it. And, things about the Vanderbilts and the Astors, and it's a fascinating thing. And I think you guys are going to love it.
I'm glad I read it. And
Good.
since you said that it was a popular book, I feel smarter because I'm
There you go.
familiar.
That's how I feel when I read a Pulitzer Prize winning novel. I feel very superior. It's the same kind of idea.
But if I had your telephone number, I'd have called you when I finished the book because
You can
it left me
call
with
me anytime you want.
question.
You can call me anytime you want. And you know what, Tammy, let's do that. Like when you send out, your next thing, tell everyone, you can give them my cell phone number.
Okay,
Oh.
Definitely, because my husband is in politics, I get a lot of weird random calls. So please text me first and then I will have your number and I will absolutely call you back. And that's a promise. But I can't, it's hard for me to answer random calls because I get some things that that are difficult. So if you guys could do that, I will speak to you at any time and I would love to. I'd love
Okay.
to.
that sounds great. Thank you,
Okay, good.
Tracy. Yes,
Thank you,
and then
guys.
everybody, thank you so much for joining us and, happy
Happy holiday.
Passover Eve and Easter weekend. And thank you for coming in again. We did record this, so tell everybody that we'll be uploading it to the YouTube channel. Okay.
Thank you.
All
All
right.
right.
Have a great holiday, everyone. And I'm
Thank
looking
you.
forward to seeing you next month.
All right. Thanks, Tracy.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Okay.